I thought I was loved. I thought I was safe. But the moment I walked into that room and saw my cousin's baby wearing my daughter's old sweater, the one I hand-stitched her name into, I knew something was deeply wrong. That moment cracked my world open. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 32 years old. I've always been the one everyone counts on, the calm voice at chaotic family dinners, the one who remembers birthdays, who never forgets to say thank you or bring a pie. I teach high school English, and I actually like it. I like watching kids piece themselves together through stories, learning that their voices matter. Maybe it's because I spent so long silencing mine. I live in the same small northern Ohio town I grew up in. It's the kind of place where church potlucks still matter, and if you cancel on Sunday brunch, your aunt calls twice to make sure you're not in the hospital. People love hard here. And they judge just as hard. That's the thing, family is everything around here. It's comfort, and it's chain. I married Jason 6 years ago. He was the kind of man who didn't say much but somehow always made you feel like you'd been heard. At least, I thought he did. He works in IT consulting, lots of phone calls, lots of phrases like data security overhaul that make my eyes glaze over. We have a daughter, Lily. She just turned 5 last month. She tells stories like me, but wilder, more magical. Jason and I used to laugh about how she'd grow up to be a novelist or a storm chaser or both. My cousin Bree is my best friend. She's 2 years younger than me, but we grew up like twins. Our mothers are sisters, two versions of the same unshakable woman. Bree and I shared everything growing up, clothes, secrets, punishments when we got caught sneaking cookies before dinner. We even got pregnant the same year. Her son, Caleb, is just 7 months younger than Lily. They've been raised like siblings. She's the person I call when Lily won't stop crying or when Jason's being emotionally distant and I can't figure out why. Or, she was. Lately, Bree's been distant. Vague. She cancels plans more often than not. She used to drop by on Friday evenings like clockwork, usually with a bottle of wine and some story about her terrible boss. But now, she just sends a quick, busy today, sorry babe, and disappears. I chalked it up to stress. I didn't push. That's what I do, I make excuses for people I love, even when it hurts. And Jason. Jason has been glued to his phone these last 2 months. I mean, he's always had his work mode, but this is different. Not just checking emails. He's smiling at it. Thumb dancing quickly, lighting up, and then going stone-faced when I walk in. Once, I tried to peek over his shoulder, and he tilted it away, almost unconsciously. It wasn't anything big, just subtle enough to make me feel like I was being paranoid. But I'm not stupid. Or maybe I've just had a long career of playing stupid to keep peace. What finally snapped me awake was a brunch. That's the irony. Not a big betrayal, not an affair text, not some shouting match. It was Sunday brunch. Just like every other Sunday. Only this time, something was off. It was hosted at my aunt's place, like usual. Everyone was there, my mom, Bree's mom, a couple of our cousins, the kids bouncing around in the living room while we set out the food. The smell of cinnamon rolls and bacon wafted through the kitchen, and for a while, everything felt normal. Like any other chaotic, loving, oversharing Donovan family brunch. Until I walked into the living room and saw Caleb, Bree's son, wearing Lily's old sweater. Now, I know how that sounds. A sweater? But this wasn't just any sweater. It was this soft, hand-knitted thing I made for Lily when she was 2. I embroidered her name in tiny blue stitches under the collar, Lily Kate. It was her favorite. She called it her brave sweater, because she wore it the first time she got a shot without crying. I had packed it away in a keepsake box last year. So why the hell was Caleb wearing it? I crouched down slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. Hey buddy, where'd you get this sweater? He shrugged. Mommy gave it to me. Bree was across the room, laughing with our aunt. She looked up just in time to see me lift the collar and find Lily's name. Her smile faltered for a second, just a second, and then she turned back like nothing had happened. Something curdled in my stomach. Later, while we were clearing dishes, I asked her. Quietly. "Bree, that sweater Caleb's wearing, it's Lily's." I thought I packed it away. She didn't even blink. Just kept rinsing a plate. Oh. Maybe it got mixed in with some of the old donation stuff? I thought you didn't want it. It wasn't her words that gave her away. It was her tone. Flat. Practiced. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like she'd expected me to notice eventually. That night, I went home and pulled out the keepsake box. The sweater was gone. But something else was missing too. When I picked up that phone from the grass, I thought maybe it would be a child's game or a harmless family photo. I didn't expect it to end my marriage. There's something about early summer in Ohio that makes everything feel deceptively whole. The sky opens up like it's been waiting all year to show off, the trees burst into 1,000 shades of green, and for a few weeks, even the most fractured families look like postcards. The annual Donovan family picnic had been a staple in our lives since before I was born. My parents' countryside estate, with its sprawling oak trees and acres of golden field, served as the backdrop for 30 years of matching t-shirts, potato sack races, too sweet lemonade, and stories that never changed but still made everyone laugh. It was sacred tradition. A glue we didn't question. This year, it was my turn to coordinate. That's how my mother phrased it when she called 2 months ago. "You're so good with details, Claire. You make everything so easy," she said, which is what she always says when she wants something to look effortless but doesn't want to do the actual work. So I did what I always did, I said yes. I organized the menus, arranged the carpool schedules for the elderly cousins, confirmed the lawn rental chairs, even stayed up late one night designing custom water bottle labels with the Donovan crest on them. Because that's what you do when you believe in the illusion. You keep setting the stage for a family that only half exists. By 11 a.m., the estate was alive with sound, gravel crunching under minivans, the squeal of kids chasing each other barefoot, the lazy clink of wine glasses under the big oak tree. I was in hostess mode, darting between the buffet tables, checking the ice coolers, making sure Aunt Colleen got her folding chair in the shade like she liked. Jason was somewhere, I assumed. He had disappeared after helping set up the canopy. The last I'd seen of him, he was by the driveway, head ducked toward Bree, her face turned just slightly away from mine as she pointed toward her car. "He's helping Bree with something in her car," someone had offered casually when I asked. I didn't think anything of it. I should have. Because that was the first of several disappearances that day. Around noon, I started to notice a pattern. I'd look around, scanning for Jason, hoping to pass Lily off to him for a bathroom break, or just have a second of grown-up conversation, and he'd be gone. I asked once, maybe twice, where he was, and both times I was met with the same vague smile from one of my relatives. Probably still helping Bree. She said something about a flat tire. Or maybe her phone charger. The excuses changed slightly each time. Just enough to feel plausible. Just enough to feel rehearsed. I should have followed. But I didn't. Not yet. Because Lily wanted me to see her drawing. Because my mom waved me over to help arrange the fruit tray. Because Bree's son Caleb had a meltdown over a bee and I was the only one he'd let near him. Because I was always the one people counted on. And counting on me meant distracting me. Looking back, I think they knew. Not all of them, maybe, but enough. Enough to build a wall of polite misdirection. Enough to protect the wrong people while letting me carry trays of deviled eggs and smile for group photos with a man who didn't come home until nearly midnight the night before. It was around 2 in the afternoon when the moment came. I was refilling lemonade pitchers near the east side of the house, a quieter patch of grass where the older folks like to rest. Lily had just run off with Bree's niece to go hunt for frogs. The sun was hot, the kind of heat that bakes everything into stillness. That's when I saw it, something glinting near the edge of the hydrangea bushes. A phone. It was face up in the grass, slightly dusty, the pink case unmistakably Bree's. I picked it up, half thinking she'd probably come back looking for it any second. I was about to call out for her when the screen lit up in my hand. A message preview. I miss last night already. I love you. See. Time slowed. It didn't stop, it just stretched, pulling tight around my ribs. I don't remember unlocking it. I don't even remember making the decision to look. My thumb just moved, like it belonged to someone else. And there it was. The full conversation. Not just the latest message, but weeks, no, months, of them. Pictures. Some blurry, some sharp. A few of Jason's hand holding Bree's. One of his head on her lap, eyes closed, in a pose I recognized so well it made my stomach turn. He had fallen asleep like that on me. Often. There were emojis, winks, inside jokes I didn't understand because they belonged to them. Messages with timestamps that matched the nights he claimed to be working late. Messages like, "She has no idea." "God, you're so beautiful." And, "Every time I see you with the kids I want to stay like that forever." I couldn't breathe. I mean, I could. My lungs were technically working. But every breath felt like glass. My legs weren't working. My hands weren't working. The phone dropped back into the grass with a soft thud, and for a moment, I just stood there, the wind moving around me like I was no longer part of the scene. And all around me, laughter. My family. My people. They were sipping wine spritzers and laughing about old camp stories, tossing frisbees and calling for seconds on pie. As if the ground beneath my feet hadn't just dropped away. As if they didn't know. But when I looked closer, when I really let myself look, I realized they did know. My mother, always the queen of composed panic, was watching me from the patio. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too alert. The second I stepped back into the main part of the lawn, she intercepted me with practiced ease. "Honey, would you mind taking a few more napkins to the tables near the barn? They're getting low." Napkins. She was sending me to the barn. The farthest point from the driveway. Away from Bree's car. And just behind her, my sister Nora. Her eyes met mine and quickly looked away, her fingers twisting the stem of her wine glass so tightly I thought it might snap. They knew. I walked, but I didn't go to the barn. I turned instead and went toward the house. Bree and Jason weren't there. Not anymore. By then, the car door had slammed, I guessed. By then, the damage was done. But I needed, what? To catch them in the act? To throw the phone at someone's feet and demand justice like I was in a courtroom? No. I needed a second. Just 1 second to get my heart out of my throat. I needed to sit. So I walked around the side of the house and leaned against the brick wall where the kitchen window opened just slightly. I closed my eyes and listened to the breeze in the trees, the clatter of silverware against paper plates, the sound of my daughter's voice somewhere in the distance, still whole, still unaware. That's when I realized, I couldn't unknow it. Not any of it. The texts, the pictures, the way my mother had steered me away from the car earlier like I was some clueless child. The way Bree had smiled at me over sangria not 2 hours before, asking about Lily's new preschool. They weren't protecting me. They were managing me. I stood slowly, my knees shaky. I walked back toward the main area, weaving through tables and blankets and buckets of lemonade. Faces blurred as I passed, faces of people who had held my baby at her christening, who had signed cards for my wedding, who had clinked glasses with me just last Christmas. And now they all felt like strangers. My father looked up as I passed. His smile was a little too nice. The kind he gave to telemarketers and awkward house guests. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" he asked, and I swear to God, he knew. He knew and said nothing. My sister Nora was sitting on the porch, nervously chewing the edge of a plastic fork. When our eyes met again, hers filled with something, guilt, maybe. Pity. But she didn't speak. And Bree? Bree had returned. She was laughing beside her mother now, waving at Caleb, pretending like everything was fine. As if she hadn't handed over her cousin's world in exchange for a man who didn't even belong to her. I saw Jason reappear minutes later, freshly showered, hair suspiciously damp for a picnic. He walked toward me like nothing had happened. As if his wife hadn't just seen a version of him he thought he had buried in another woman's phone. "Hey babe, they're asking if we should move dessert under the tree for more shade," he said, smiling, oblivious. And I smiled back. Because I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Not when they had watched me be lied to and stayed silent. But I was going to remember. And I was going to make them remember too. You think the world will explode when you say the words, when you expose the truth, rip the curtain wide open. But sometimes, the most painful part isn't the confession. It's the silence that follows it. I wish I could tell you that I planned it, that I made a speech, demanded justice, threw the phone down like a mic drop and left everyone gasping. I wish I had been that composed, that cinematic. But the truth is, I just broke. It was maybe 20 minutes after I saw them, after I read the messages and stood among all those people pretending they didn't hear the scream forming inside my chest. I didn't walk away. I didn't scream in private. I walked right back toward them, toward the big canopy where the desserts were being laid out and Jason was handing Lily a cookie like he hadn't just kissed my cousin in her car. Bree was standing beside him, her eyes darting everywhere but mine. Her hand brushed his arm as she laughed at something my sister Nora said. Like nothing had happened. Like the world was still spinning the way it always had. I stood in the center of the lawn, heart racing like I'd run a marathon, and I called his name. Just once. Jason. Everything stilled. He looked up, the smile on his face twitching slightly, and in that split second I saw it, the flicker of panic. The tiniest sliver of guilt. Not fear of what he'd done, but fear that I might do something inconvenient in front of a crowd. I held up the phone, Bree's pink phone, the screen cracked slightly at the corner where I'd dropped it. "You left this," I said, my voice louder than I expected. It's amazing what people say when they think no one's watching. Jason froze. Bree turned to me with the kind of pale expression reserved for crime scenes. She didn't reach for the phone. She didn't say a word. I read the messages, I said, each syllable a weight dropped into the stillness. Every one of them. Every, "I miss you." Every, "We'll tell her soon." You could have told me. You could have told me the truth. No one moved. My mother stepped forward first. "Claire," she said gently, eyes flicking toward Lily, "let's not do this right now. Not here. Not in front of the kids." I turned to her slowly. "You knew." She didn't answer. That was answer enough. And that's when it hit me, not just Jason, not just Bree. This wasn't a two-person betrayal. This was an entire ecosystem built to keep me docile, smiling, occupied. They had all seen the signs. They had all chosen silence. Bree started crying then, tears spilling down her cheeks in big, shaking sobs that made her look younger than I'd seen her in years. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she choked out. "We didn't want to hurt you." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the line was so tired it felt scripted. "You didn't want to hurt me?" I asked, my voice steady now, detached even. "Is that why you smiled at me every weekend? Is that why you let me watch your son while you slipped out the door to meet my husband?" Jason stepped forward, his face pinched. "Claire, this wasn't about." "No," I cut him off. "No more explanations. No more lies. Just don't. You don't get to soften this." My aunt, Bree's mother, wrapped her arms around Bree like she was the victim. "It's complicated, Claire," she said in a soothing tone, like I was a child having a tantrum over spilled juice. "Love doesn't always follow the rules." I stared at her, stunned. "Love?" I repeated. "You're calling this love?" There was a noise behind me, chairs scraping, someone clearing their throat, the the rustle of awkward people trying to pretend they hadn't just watched a woman's heart fall out of her chest. But no one said a word. Not my sister. Not my father. Not my childhood best friend who had come early to help me arrange fruit trays. No one said, "Claire, I'm sorry." No one said, "This is wrong." Not a single person crossed the space between me and them. I turned, heart pounding, and walked to where Lily was sitting with her cookie, completely unaware of the emotional bloodbath happening 10 feet away. I scooped her into my arms, her little arms wrapping around my neck, sticky and sweet, and I carried her to the car. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I drove home in silence. No one followed. No one called. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the day after. The silence that followed was louder than the confrontation itself. It was in the absence of texts that normally buzzed with shared recipes or last-minute babysitting help. It was in the quiet of the front porch where my mom usually left flowers or food after a family disagreement. It was in the way the world kept turning even though I felt like I was still standing in the middle of that yard, still holding that damn phone. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I just stopped. I went to work. I picked Lily up from school. I made dinners I didn't eat. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later, quietly, without fanfare, at the same courthouse where Jason and I had signed our marriage license 6 years earlier. He didn't contest it. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look surprised. The nights were the worst. Lily would go to bed, and the house would fall silent except for the buzz of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the walls settling. I'd sit at the kitchen table, fingers curled around a mug of tea I never finished, staring at the darkened window. I couldn't cry. Not really. It was like my tears had calcified into something sharp and dry, something stuck in my throat that couldn't be let out without cutting everything on its way up. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Weeks passed. Then one morning, I found myself in a therapist's office, knees tucked awkwardly under me on a suede chair that felt too soft for the hardness in my chest. My friend Rachel had insisted. She wasn't family. She wasn't from our town. She was a teacher too, someone I'd grown close with over late grading sessions and lunchtime venting. "You don't have to be okay," she told me after the picnic. "You just have to be honest." The counselor was quiet. Kind. She didn't press. She just asked, "What would happen if you weren't the strong one anymore?" The question stunned me more than I expected. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I had always been the one who held it together. The one who smiled through discomfort, who kept the peace, who made room for everyone else. I had been raised to believe that strength meant silence, that endurance was love, that forgiving meant you were worthy. But now I wondered if they had all loved me because I made them comfortable, not because they saw me. Maybe that's why no one said anything. Because speaking up would have meant acknowledging the version of me that felt. That hurt. That needed. Maybe silence wasn't meant to hurt me. Maybe it was meant to protect them from themselves. When I said that out loud, halting, tearless, almost as if reading it from a script, my therapist nodded gently. And then she said it. A sentence I didn't know I needed until I heard it. Maybe they didn't want to hurt themselves. The words hung there, awful and freeing. Because of course they didn't want to see themselves as the kind of people who would allow this. Of course they didn't want to look in the mirror and realize they had sacrificed a daughter, a niece, a sister to keep their narrative neat. That was the revelation. It wasn't about me being invisible. It was about them needing me to be. Because if I wasn't strong, if I wasn't unbreakable, if I wasn't the good one who could endure anything, then they'd have to feel the weight of what they'd done. And they weren't built for that. I walked out of the therapist's office that day not fixed, not even fully sure I wanted to keep going. But I knew one thing clearly for the first time in weeks. This wasn't my shame to carry. I thought starting over would feel like breaking free, like bursting through some invisible door. But the truth is, rebuilding yourself after being dismantled by the people who claim to love you feels more like picking glass out of your skin, piece by painful piece, until you can finally walk barefoot again. It has been just over 2 years since the day I stood under a white party canopy with a pink phone in my hand and watched my entire foundation collapse in silence. In some ways, I remember it so vividly I could describe the exact pattern on the dessert napkins. In others, it feels like it happened to a version of myself that I no longer inhabit, a woman who mistook peacekeeping for love and silence for strength. My name is still Claire Donovan. I'm still a high school English teacher, still 30-something, still a single mother to a precocious little girl who asks the kind of questions that make the air feel heavy. But nearly everything else has changed. We live now in a modest but warm one-story house near the school, a small place with lemon-colored walls and creaky floors that I've grown to love. The living room always smells faintly of eucalyptus and crayons, because Lily's art corner is now its own sacred space. She's thriving in ways I didn't even realize she had been stifled before. Her drawings are wilder, her laughter less cautious, her questions more direct. Sometimes I find myself staring at her across the kitchen island and wondering how she ever survived the tension that used to coil between her father and me like a low-grade fever. How many nights had I convinced myself she didn't notice the silence at dinner? That she didn't hear the edge in his voice or the too careful kindness in mine? After the divorce, for a while, I became obsessed with silence, not the absence of noise, but the kind that weighs on you in rooms filled with people. I wrote in journals, scribbled into margins of lesson plans, jotted phrases onto sticky notes that ended up on bathroom mirrors and inside kitchen drawers. Eventually, I started turning those fragments into essays. Little windows into the grief I didn't know how to say out loud, into the fury I had spent years folding into something more palatable. I wrote about the phone, the picnic, the betrayal, not just by Jason and Bree, but by the whole intricate machinery of my family's silence. One piece, written during a particularly foggy December afternoon, found a bigger audience than I ever imagined. It was titled "The Picnic Where I Died and Lived Again." I never expected anyone outside my small group of readers to notice it, but somehow, it found its way into the world like a message in a bottle that landed on the right shore. Within a week, it had been shared over 60,000 times. Emails flooded in, women from every imaginable background writing to say, "Me too." Not just stories of infidelity, but stories of being made invisible, of being erased, of being chosen last by people who once kissed them goodnight and swore to protect them. That's when I began to understand something I hadn't fully grasped before. I wasn't alone in what happened to me, but I had been isolated. And there's a difference. Isolation is what's done to you. Aloneness is what you walk through to find your way back. I still haven't spoken to most of my family. My mother sent a birthday card for Lily last year. It was signed "Love, Grandma and Grandpa," even though my father had passed months earlier and she hadn't reached out since. My sister texted after the essay went viral, a vague message that read, "Hope you're doing okay. People are talking." I didn't respond. And Bree? Bree sent a letter. A real one. Blue ink, careful cursive, like it was meant to be performative. She was pregnant again. She said the baby was a girl, that she thought of me when picking out names, that she regretted the way things happened but hoped we could someday sit down and talk for real. She enclosed a photo of Caleb holding a sonogram. I never replied. Forgiveness is a personal process, one I've chosen to embark on in my own quiet way. But what I've learned is that forgiveness doesn't mean access. It doesn't mean I let people back into the space they once destroyed just because they now understand what they've done. I'm still learning to accept that not everyone who breaks you feels the impact of the fall. Jason, for his part, wanted shared custody. I didn't fight him. Not in court, anyway. I knew what that would do to Lily, how that kind of legal war tears through children like shrapnel, even when both parents think they're protecting them. So I agreed. Every other weekend, she goes to his place. A condo downtown, where I imagine things are clean and sterile and oddly quiet. She never talks much about her time there, and I don't ask. Not because I don't care, but because I'm trying to give her the space to define her own version of that relationship. What breaks me still, quietly, is how little he's fought to be better. He does what's required. He picks her up on time. He brings her back with clean clothes and half-finished art projects. But he doesn't ask about her school plays. He doesn't know her teacher's name. He never asks how I'm doing, not even once in 2 years. I grieve that harder than I grieve the end of our marriage. The realization that I had once built a life with someone who, at the core, wasn't capable of loving anyone the way I had believed he loved me. But from that grief came something strange and beautiful, clarity. I've spoken now, publicly, about what happened. Not just through writing, but with my voice, standing behind podiums in rooms filled with other women who had survived betrayal, dismissal, silence. The first time was at a women's retreat organized by a former colleague who had also left a toxic marriage. I was terrified. My voice shook for the first 5 minutes. But then I said the line I'd written in one of my essays, the line that had resonated more deeply than I expected. When they all knew but didn't tell me, it wasn't kindness. It was cowardice. And the room exhaled. The silence broke. Dozens of women came up to me afterward with eyes wet and hands trembling, saying things like, "That's exactly what happened to me," or, "You just gave language to something I've never been able to explain." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the woman everyone had quietly watched unravel. I felt like someone who had pulled herself out of the rubble and found something worth building again. In that new life, in that still-forming version of who I am now, I've let someone in. Her name is Leah. She's a nurse at the local clinic. We met during one of Lily's wellness visits when Lily told her proudly, "My mom's a writer now," and Leah smiled and said, "So am I," in my head. It was a small moment, but something about her felt different, calm, rooted, like someone who knew how to listen without trying to fix things. We started slowly. Walks after work. Coffee on weekends. No big declarations, just a quiet unfolding of presence. Leah knows about the divorce. She knows about Bree, about the phone, about the picnic. She never asks for the details unless I offer them, and she never flinches when I do. She carries her own pain, too. A brother lost to addiction, a fiancé who left her without explanation 3 months before their wedding. But she doesn't wear it like armor. She wears it like a scar, visible, but no longer bleeding. We haven't introduced her to Lily yet. Not formally. She's been Miss Leah from work, for now. But sometimes Lily asks if Miss Leah will come with us to the botanical garden again, and I know, eventually, those lines will blur in the gentlest way possible. And maybe that's the most radical thing of all, rebuilding not with fire and fury, but with softness and boundaries and the knowledge that love, real love, doesn't require you to vanish inside it. I still have moments when I ache, when I hear a familiar song, or find an old family photo tucked into a drawer, and I wonder what it would feel like to have been protected instead of sacrificed. But those moments pass. And what remains is this. A woman who is no longer quiet to be loved. A mother who listens more than she speaks. A writer who turned her worst moment into a map. A survivor who didn't just move on, but moved forward. It's strange how healing feels less like victory and more like quiet. You don't stand on a mountaintop declaring your strength. You sit cross-legged on a blanket beside people who see you, really see you, and realize you're not waiting for anyone's applause anymore. It's been 5 years since the picnic that broke me. 5 years since I stood in a circle of people I loved and discovered they had already moved on without me. 5 years since I realized strength wasn't silence, and love wasn't compliance. Tonight, there's another picnic. This time, it's not in my family's pristine backyard or hosted under the heavy expectations of generational duty. It's the annual end-of-year celebration for the school where I teach, an event filled with paper lanterns, popsicles, and children chasing each other across open grass with the kind of freedom I used to think only existed in storybooks. I sit on a soft quilt with Leah and Lily under a maple tree just beyond the main crowd, our shoes kicked off and tucked beside a basket of snacks we barely touched. The evening air is warm but not oppressive, the kind of summer night that settles into your skin without asking. Fireflies blink lazily across the lawn while teachers laugh over folding chairs and parents swap stories with coffee in one hand and juice boxes in the other. Lily is 10 now, taller, sharper, still tender in all the right places. She speaks her mind more often and sometimes calls me out when I forget to rest or say yes to too many things. A few months ago, she painted a mural in her room of stars and oceans and wrote across the top in looping script, "Still growing." When I asked her why those words, she looked at me and said, "Because that's what we are, right?" Tonight, she's stretched across Leah's lap, her fingers laced through Leah's as they listen to the student choir warming up. I watch them in profile and feel something I once didn't believe I'd ever feel again, not just safety, but joy. I'm not waiting for anything anymore. Not permission. Not approval. Not reconciliation that never came. And that's when I see her. Across the picnic lawn, by the drink station near the staff table, stands my cousin Emma. I haven't seen her since the divorce. Not because of a falling out, but because of what came before it, the silence. Emma had been there the day everything exploded. She hadn't said anything. She hadn't even made eye contact as I carried Lily to the car. I hadn't known what she knew, but I knew she hadn't stood up. Our eyes meet, and for a second, I think she might turn away. But she doesn't. She walks over slowly, holding 2 small cups of lemonade, one of which she offers to me with a shaky smile. Her hair is shorter than I remember, and there's a quiet weight in her face that time and consequence often carve into people who carry guilt for too long. "Hey, Claire," she says, voice soft. "I didn't know you'd be here. My niece goes to this school now." I nod, unsure of what to say. Leah notices the shift in the air and gently suggests she and Lily go grab dessert. I squeeze her hand once in thanks as she leaves. Emma sits down on the edge of the blanket, not too close, not assuming forgiveness. Just present. After a moment, she says, "I think about it all the time. That day. What I didn't do. I don't speak. I didn't know how to tell you back then," she continues, her voice steady despite the confession. "I was scared of being shut out. I was scared that if I said anything, I'd lose everyone. And I still lost you. And it's haunted me." I look at her for a long moment before replying, and what I say surprises even me. "You were shut out anyway," I say. "We all were. Just differently." She lets out a small, broken laugh and wipes at her eyes. "That's true, isn't it?" We sit in silence for a minute, letting the cicadas and distant music fill the space between what was and what still lingers. "I'm sorry," she whispers. And I believe her. But I don't tell her it's okay. Because it wasn't. And because that's not what she needs to hear. Instead, I say, "I hope you're doing better." She nods. Trying to. She stands after a while and thanks me for listening. I watch her walk back to her table and wonder how many other people carry stories they've never spoken aloud. How many made choices not because they were cruel, but because they were afraid. And I finally understand something fully, something my therapist once hinted at in a quiet, offhand way that took me years to unpack. Forgiveness isn't for their sake. Forgiveness is so my daughter doesn't inherit my bitterness. It's so Lily doesn't look into the world and assume everyone is either a villain or a victim. It's so she knows people are complicated, and hearts are fragile, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to love yourself enough not to chase those who discarded you. I've written more in the last 5 years than I did in the entire decade before them. Essays, articles, guest columns, even a book, an anthology of stories from women who learned the difference between endurance and freedom. And every time I publish something, someone writes to say, "You put my story into words." That's how I know I didn't just survive it. I repurposed it. I rewrote the ending. The fireworks start just as Leah and Lily return, her hand full of cookies, Leah laughing at something Lily whispered. We all settle in on the blanket, shoulders touching, eyes tilted skyward. Red bursts into gold. Purple dissolves into white. It's beautiful. Not tragic. Not bittersweet. Just beautiful. As the last firework fades into smoky ribbons, Lily turns to me, wide-eyed with wonder. "Next year," she says, "can we invite some cousins too? Like, real ones?" I don't answer right away. I think about what she means, what she's asking. She's not asking for Bree. Not for Jason's nieces. She's asking for connection. For people who feel like family, whether or not they're written in the bloodline. So I smile softly, leaning back against Leah's shoulder, and say, maybe. Some new ones. Because family isn't just who you come from. Sometimes, it's who you choose when the ashes clear. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell to not miss the release of the next exciting stories.